As a chronically online knitter, I know there are certain sweater patterns the algorithm is begging me to make. They're constantly popping up on my FYP, and now I'm inspired. I am inspired to de-influence you. So hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, give this video a thumbs up, and let's talk about the 5 sweater patterns I won't knit and what I would knit instead. Hello, welcome to my channel. If you are new here, I am Carrie Craft Geek, and this is where I talk about making pretty things with pretty string, usually with 2 sticks. Although I guess today a large portion of the video is about what I'm not gonna make with pretty string and 2 sticks. Speaking of, a quick reminder as we get into this, that this video is for funsies. It is just my opinion about these patterns. Some of the things I might talk about today, you may love, or you may hate. Regardless, it's not meant to be a personal judgment on anybody's taste or enjoyment or disenjoyment of a pattern. Is that even a word? Unenjoyment? Misenjoyment? I would love to hear your thoughts about anything we talk about today down in the comments, but as always, let's make sure that we are not shading any designers, anybody who really enjoys any of these patterns. We are only critiquing the patterns themselves. And if you've made any of these sweater patterns, I would love to hear about what your experience is, because right now I say I won't knit any of these 5 sweaters, but I could always change my mind. There are all sorts of sweater patterns that will promise to teach you how to make your first sweater. And I will say somebody who really delivers that is Tin Can Knits with her simple sweater, How to Knit a Top-Down Round Yoke Pullover. This pattern is a top-down in the round sweater featuring a circular yoke construction, and you will absolutely learn how to knit a sweater with this pattern. The problem for me is this is so basic, it's kind of boring. It's just rounds and rounds of stockinette with some ribbing at the collar, the cuffs, and the bottom hemline. But I think my biggest gripe is it really kind of wastes the design potential of a circular yoke sweater. For me, the whole reason a circular yoke sweater even exists is to do things like stranded color work or a type of slip stitch color work, like in this sweater, the ethereal sweater. This is also a circular yoke sweater, but you have this gorgeous kind of honeycomb slip stitch pattern throughout the yoke. It's not difficult to knit at all, but you get a much more interesting sweater that doesn't look like you could buy it at any discount clothing store. Here's the good news. Tin Can Knits actually has another very popular free sweater pattern that is often recommended to people who want to learn how to knit a sweater for the first time that I think is way more interesting. The Flax Sweater by Tin Can Knits is often recommended to new knitters as a first-time sweater. This is a top-down in the round sweater that features raglan shaping. It's virtually the same type of construction as the circular yoke sweater. The only difference is basically where the increases get placed in the yoke portion. So this sweater is going to teach you how to do the same basic construction as the simple sweater. But what makes this sweater, I think, better is this one small design detail. It has these garter ridges that go from the collar down the length of the sleeve. And this garter ridge detail is a very simple stitch pattern that any beginning knitter can do. But it also keeps this knit more interesting for more experienced knitters who might get bored with rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds of stockinette. So if you want a sweater pattern that's going to teach you how to knit a top-down in the round yoke sweater, or you just want to knit something that's more relaxing, I think the Flax Sweater is a great option. The Halibut Sweater by Caitlin Hunter is a top-down in the round sweater that features this large graphical motif of a halibut fish. I swear this pattern was popping up everywhere on my FYP last year. And there is part of me that is drawn to kind of the bold, kitschy fun of this design. But at the end of the day, I won't knit it. I know I'm not somebody who wants to wear a fish sweater. But the other reason I'm not going to be knitting this sweater anytime soon is looking at project notes from the website that shall not be named and various subreddits. I do think this sweater kind of sacrifices fit for aesthetics. This sweater has a very deep yoke, and the problem with sweaters with deep yokes is if you try to lift your arms, a lot of times you're risking flashing people, and I don't want to flash anybody. Now, if you go online, you can find various directions and advice on how to adjust the pattern for a better fit and that the yoke isn't so deep, which kind of begs the question, why did the designer not do that kind of work? She may just like the look of a deep yoke sweater. There are those people, and I'm not judging. But for those of us who don't like a deep yoke, you know, having to modify a pattern like this makes knitting the sweater an iffy proposition. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't mind doing modifications to a sweater pattern to get a better fit. One of the great things about being hand knitters is that we can take a pattern and get a personalized fit for our own body. This is the huge advantage of making your own clothes as opposed to buying everything from a store. However, when I'm at the point of recharting the color work so that I can get the yoke to hit in a reasonable location on the sweater, what might be considered a standard location on the sweater, we're moving past modification and we're getting into redesign. And that for me tends to be a pass, no matter how much I happen to love the color work. If I want to knit a sweater with a large graphical motif inspired by the animal kingdom, instead I'm going to knit the Moon Moth sweater by Natalie Knits. This sweater also features a large animal motif and a circular yoke construction. But to me, I don't know, I just think that a large moth like this on a sweater reads as more cool than kitsch. And because of the placement of the moth, the yoke doesn't have to be so deep, and there's more possibilities for personalizing the fit of the sweater as opposed to having to redesign it. And I think the Moon Moth sweater really strikes that balance between fit and form. Maybe you've heard the term quiet luxury. I feel like this was something that's really been popping up lately in the past 6 months for me. And there is a sweater that I came across when researching this video called the Sabai top. It is a lovely sleeveless boat neck top that I think really is going for that quiet luxury aesthetic. Depending on your yarn choice, you could knit this, pair it with all sorts of different outfits. People would look at it and they would never know, never even think to ask if you knit it yourself. And to me, that's kind of the problem. If I'm going to invest my time, if I'm going to invest my time, my money, and my yarn into a hand knit top, I don't want to sacrifice interesting details. But that doesn't mean you can't have something that looks quietly elegant either. Let me introduce you to the Gulsang top by Yamagara Knits. At first glance, this looks like another simple, elegant tank top. But if you look at the neckline and down at the bottom hem, you discover the small, lacy flower motif. Oh, I love this photo. See how she layered this tank underneath this other hand knit? I absolutely love that. Like, oh, now I want to make this. Now I want to make both patterns. You know, sometimes it is subtle, small details that can make a hand knit look handmade. We don't always have to lean into big, bold, colorful designs or bold stitch patterns. Sometimes we can go with something simple and understated and still have something that looks handmade and unique. So what do you think so far of the sweaters we've talked about? Do you agree with me? Do you not agree with me? And what would you knit? What sweaters do you recommend I knit next? I'm not gonna lie, the first time I saw the porcelain sweater by Knit, I thought, oh, I wanna knit that. I was drawn to this oversized drop shoulder comfy day sweater that featured these bands of colorwork motifs inspired by antique fine china. I actually really like a drop shoulder personally. I like the comfy casualness of it, even though I probably don't have the best shoulders for it because they're kind of narrow, and drop shoulder kind of just emphasizes that. I don't care, I like it anyway. And then I started looking more closely at the pictures and some notes, and then I was like, wave off. Wave off. This is not for you. First, I find the bands of the color work, there's something about the proportions of them and how they are spaced out that gives this sweater kind of these large, blocky stripe effects. And I feel like where these bands would hit on me would just not be attractive. I have seen some modifications that reduce the number of plain rounds in between the stranded color work, and I did think those proportions worked out better, but I'm still not interested in knitting the porcelain sweater even with that easy modification. Because my other issue has to do with this first stripe at the top of the sweater. Because this is a drop shoulder construction, this first band of color work just comes straight across and terminates here at the border between the body of the sweater and the sleeve. And it makes the stripe of color work to me look disrupted, and it sort of draws attention to the drop shoulder construction in an unappealing way. Then there's the actual construction of the sweater. This is a seamless drop shoulder construction. But in order to do that, there's a portion of the sweater where you're having to knit the color work flat. And not everybody loves doing that with stranded color work. As one comment said, there's a reason steeking exists. So instead of knitting any version of this porcelain sweater, instead I would choose to knit the Moonflower sweater by Buddy Muff Designs. The Moonflower sweater also features this lovely floral motifs that I do think is somewhat reminiscent of porcelain china. Maybe not as much as the porcelain sweater, but it's not completely outside of that realm. What I like about this, however, is that it is a circular yoke sweater. The yoke is, I think, a good yoke depth, and the all over color work design, I think, is more flattering than the porcelain sweater. It avoids kind of those wide stripe look that the porcelain sweater has. And instead, you get an overall stranded color work design. I just love this Moonflower sweater. In fact, when I was looking at different alternative sweater patterns I might want to knit over and over and over again, I was drawn to Buddy Muff Designs' work. I could have picked one of her various sweater patterns to be an alternative to almost everything on my list. So if you haven't looked at any of her patterns yet, I highly recommend that you check them out. And there's no affiliate link involved. I just really like her work. The Weekender sweater by Andrea Mowry is a perennial favorite in online knitter forums. I think every year this sweater pops up. And I get why. I too am totally seduced by this just comfy, casual, perfect for a weekend stroll through the forest. You know, handed to Andrea Mowry, the woman knows how to take an aesthetic photo. So the Weekender is a seamless sweater with a drop down shoulder, and it's a drop down shoulder, which means it's gonna have kind of a oversized, boxy sweater look, which personally, again, much like the porcelain sweater, I like that fit. I like a comfy sweater that I can just be snuggled up on the couch. But reading through the online forums, I found constant complaints about fit issues, mainly with the neck, There is short row shaping in the back, but I don't know, there seems to be something with the neck where people don't like the way that it fits. It might fall back a little bit depending on your body shape. Me personally, I cannot handle a neckline that like falls back against my neck. I don't want to be strangled by what I'm wearing, and that's how I feel. Like, I cannot wear turtlenecks. I can not wear mock turtlenecks, like nothing. I do not want things touching my neck. Personally, I just don't find the sweater, despite the photos, to be inspiring enough to modify the fit. Instead, what I would knit is A Magical Place by Paola Albergamo. I hope I pronounced it correctly. She's an Italian designer, and when I first looked at this sweater, I was like, yeah, it's another comfy, oversized sweater. But when I looked more closely, I saw that at the collar and at the hemline, you actually have this interesting ribbing detail that I thought was really nice. But then there was a big surprise. This sweater has hidden pockets. And who doesn't love anything with pockets? I love pockets. I want more pockets in my life. I think every woman wants more pockets in their life. And this sweater delivers on that. This, to me, even if the fit may not be perfect and I might have to make some adjustments, I wouldn't mind doing it because I love the idea of the pockets. I love the details of the ribbing, and I look at this sweater and it is kind of a perfect comfy sweater to throw on when I'm gonna take a stroll on like a crisp autumn evening. So there it is, 5 sweater patterns that I would not knit and 5 that I would knit instead. I would love to hear from you down in the comments below what you think. What patterns have you really enjoyed looking at? Which ones are inspiring you to pick up your needles? And also, what sweater patterns do you love to knit? I would love to hear your recommendations for a sweater pattern that you've loved making. All right, I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If so, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with your other knitting friends. Liking, sharing, commenting on videos are all ways that help support my channel and get it out there that the space exists, and then the community grows, and then I can keep delivering, these videos on YouTube. If you'd like to take your support a little bit further, you can always choose to utilize one of my affiliate links. When you click on affiliate link to do some shopping, I earn a small commission, and this helps support my channel. So if you click on one of my affiliate links, thank you so much. It is so greatly appreciated. Or you can always just leave me a tip through a YouTube Super Thanks or buy me a coffee. And of course, the free, easy way to support the channel always is to make sure that you click subscribe and the notification bell. Thank you again for joining me today. I hope that you have a wonderful day, evening, weekend, weeknight, whenever you might be watching this. And as always, happy health and happy making. Bye.